Hello guys and welcome to my updated Wild Rift tier list. My name is Excoundrel, I hope you're well. If you're enjoying the Wild Rift content, feel free to subscribe and join the Scoundrel gang. We are about 2 weeks or so away from a European release of this game, and I am super excited to play on normal ping because I find playing on 200 ping incredibly difficult, but I'm going to be spamming the game like crazy when we get the European release, so I'm very much looking forward to that. So I hope you guys are all ready for that release. Also, thanks to G2A for sponsoring the channel. There's a reference link on the description below. So today we're going to go through a tier list. There has been some shifts. I've been looking at high elo games and people are now challenger on Wild Rift. So I've been looking at some challenger match histories and kind of seeing where people are going with their builds. And hopefully that will help us kind of get an idea of where the meta's at. There hasn't been a huge amount of change, but there's been a little bit of change. And of course, we always start with the mid lane. So let's jump in there. So we'll start in the mid lane as we usually do. These are often comprised of mages and assassins. And I kind of want to start with the fact that Zed has made his way to S tier. Yes, the more and more I've seen of high elo play, and the more people have got used to playing Wild Rift and become more comfortable with the control set, the more I've seen Zed. Zed is one of those characters that functions a bit like Ezreal in the sense that the auto-aim function, the portrait lock function, really does well with his kit. If you can portrait lock onto someone, use your ultimate and spam all your abilities, you're usually going to get a kill. So Zed has made his way up to S tier between Orianna and Ahri. Still seeing a lot of Orianna and Ahri in high elo games too. Down in A tier, seeing quite a lot of Twisted Fate, and yes, AP Gragas appears to be coming back to the mid lane again. He's kind of floating between mid, top, and jungle. He's a bit of a flexible pick, and I guess that's one of the reasons that you're seeing him, that someone can pick him and go into any of the roles if they need to. So we are seeing a little bit of Gragas here and there. Yasuo still kind of sticking around A tier. If you're good with Yasuo, you're obviously going to be incredibly influential in a game. What I would say is that, you know, Yasuo is a bit hit or miss. He can be very, very strong, but just in League of Legends, if you get too far behind, he can feel a little bit useless. B tier, Seraphine, actually pretty good in mid lane. Lux, Annie, both solid picks. Akali definitely down the list in terms of assassins. Her kit is quite complicated. Her damage application is a bit harder to pull off than the likes of Yasuo or Zed, as well as Fizz just doesn't quite have the damage ceiling that Zed seems to have right now in the current meta. And then I still think Ziggs and Aurelion Sol are not great. Ziggs especially because his skill shots feel really clunky, doesn't really deal as much damage as Ahri or Orianna, and his wave clear isn't really that impressive. And Aurelion Sol because it's just like, he's got some quality of life changes for Wild Rift, but you still need to perma roam. And honestly, it's easy to roam with pretty much any mid laner in Wild Rift right now. So yeah, I'm not entirely convinced about Aurelion Sol. Let's jump up to the solo lane or the Baron lane. There have been some changes here in the sense that I think Camille is still the absolute like S tier pick. I've seen Camille in pretty much all of the high elo games that I've looked at. Olaf is still a strong contender in top lane, but I've also seen a lot of Fiora. Fiora has popped up as a really strong top lane pick, so I expect to see some more Fiora over the next few weeks. AP Gragas again. Garen has dropped down a little bit. The reason Garen has dropped down a little bit is I think people have realized how to play against him. Just don't get caught up in early trades, and eventually you'll be able to outscale. So Garen has kind of dropped off a little bit. Malphite and Jax are still dependable top lane picks. In B tier, Vayne with the nerfs is not as strong as she used to be in top lane, but she is still viable. Nasus, I think in low elo games, Nasus is like stomping. Like low elo games, Nasus is great. He's got a boot dash, you can run Ghost, you can run Flash. There are lots of things that you get from Wild Rift that make Nasus more viable in Wild Rift than they do in sort of regular League of Legends. And the boot dash especially is one of those things that I think makes Nasus that much more viable. Mundo is strong, so is Singed in the right hands, and again, Akali, kind of one of those picks that she's okay. She's not exactly insane, but she's pretty strong. I forgot to include Tryndamere on this list. In fact, I'll probably just add Tryndamere at the end, but he's kind of down in C tier as well. Tryndamere is not the strongest pick. He scales really well, but again, his early game is really abusable. Jarvan, Yasuo, I mean, Jarvan's okay, but he's better in the jungle. Yasuo, Lee Sin, and Zed, they have better lanes that they can be in. Zed especially, you know, Yasuo and Zed struggle against tanks. So if you go up against someone that's going to itemize armor against you early on, or against, you know, the likes of Camille and Fiora who are better early brawlers, you're going to struggle. And Lee Sin is just better faring in the jungle, if I'm completely honest with you. And yes, Tryndamere would have been down in D tier. I'll probably add Tryndamere to this list just like as a little add-on afterwards. Okay, going to move over to the AD carry list, and actually some surprising moves in the AD carry list. Despite Ezreal's nerf, he seems to be played all the time still. I still think Ezreal is a very strong carry despite the nerfs. They were pretty big nerfs, but they weren't absolutely huge. But honestly, the other carry that's kind of popped up is Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa is kind of proving to be incredibly strong in the meta right now, and we're seeing quite a lot of her. Both the Manamune build and kind of the sort of the Blade of the Ruined King into crit build are quite strong. We're seeing both of those being played on Kai'Sa. Then following that, I'm seeing a lot of Jhin. So really the 3 AD carries that I see the most of are Kai'Sa, Ezreal, and Jhin. And then sometimes you're seeing Ashe and Vayne, and then even beyond that, you're very occasionally seeing Misfortune and Jinx. You never see Varus, and obviously you can still play Twisted Fate and Ziggs in the bot lane. Ziggs obviously not played as AD, but he's played as AP instead. But again, I just don't think Ziggs is in a good place right now. It just doesn't seem to translate very well over to Wild Rift as it stands. But honestly, the 3 top tier AD carries that I'm seeing are Kai'Sa, Ezreal, and Jhin. They're kind of dominating, and then you're sometimes seeing Vayne and Ashe as well, both of whom scale pretty well, and again can get hold of their items relatively quickly also. So that is the AD carry list, and again, Ezreal's still S tier, honestly. Even with the nerfs, Ezreal is still in a great position. Right, we're going to go to the support list now, and we'll have a look at the supports and see where they stand. And the major changes is that now more people have unlocked Braum and have practiced with him. You're seeing Braum all the time. I think he is an incredibly strong carry. I played a game with an ex-Vainglory player called Mowgli, and honestly, Braum just strikes me as one of the strongest carry supports in the game. You're still seeing a load of Blitzcrank, though, following that Alistar. Beyond Blitzcrank, Braum, and Alistar in high tier, it's a little bit of a kind of a toss-up, but Seraphine, I think, is better in the support position than she is in the mid lane, so you're seeing quite a bit of her. A lot of people play Janna. Again, Janna's just a safe support. Like Janna will always empower your AD carry to be better, and she's generally safe, and her healing is really strong on Wild Rift too. In B tier, sometimes you see Sona and Nami. People will play Lux when they don't really want to play support, and they want to play a mage instead. I would say that Lux is not as good as compared to the other supports in this list, but it is something that you can play. And Soraka still seems a little bit underpowered compared to the others. You sometimes see Malphite support and Annie support, but these supports are kind of bad because they require level 6 to be good. Both of them have great all-in potential. Sorry, level 5. Both of them have great all-in potential at level 5, but you need to wait to level 5, and then often with Annie, you even need Flash to make it work as well. Don't get me wrong, I've played Annie support and it's good, but like, you can get abused in the early laning phase really hard to the extent that you might not actually be able to come back and use those level 5 ultimate all-ins that you're actually pretty good for. But they are viable supports in the right circumstance, and especially with Malphite, if you build armor, or even if you build AP, you can be like a one-shot machine. So Malphite's still okay and still viable. I would say he's better in top lane personally, but he's still good. Alright, we're going to go have a look at the jungle now, and some of the major changes are that I've moved Shyvana down a tier, and the reason being is that almost every single high elo game has Lee Sin in it. Lee Sin is just the dominant jungler in the meta right now. Shyvana sometimes varies. You see her, you see Graves, you see Xin Zhao, you see Olaf, but you always see Lee Sin in almost every game. So Lee Sin kind of sits up at the S tier, but there are a lot of viable A tier junglers. Shyvana, Xin Zhao, Olaf, Graves. Gragas, again, flexible pick right now, can play in the top 3 lanes very easily. I've even seen some Gragas support. And actually, I like Jarvan. I think Jarvan's a little underrated as a jungler. He's got great early gank potential, and he's got very strong engage potential in the late game. Vi drops down a little bit, so does Evelynn and Jax. You just don't really see them played at higher elos. I think they are good junglers. Evelynn is definitely a snowball jungler. She can really pop off. But you just don't see them played as much. The problem with like Amumu and Mundo and Master Yi is their early game is really bad. Even though Master Yi is kind of what I call a noob stomp jungler, like you get to a certain point in the game on Master Yi and he just kills everybody. The problem that I have with him is his early game sucks. So against any good jungler that is playing any of the junglers in the tiers above, they will usually try and punish you early and make your life a living hell by invading and constantly putting you behind. And that's why Master Yi can suck a little bit, because his early game is dire. C tier and D tier, you don't really see them as much. You sometimes see Tryndamere jungle, but I just don't think he's good. I think he's got really poor gank potential. He has to farm a lot to get the gold that he would have got just being in top lane. Fizz as well, not particularly strong. Garen, Malphite, and Nasus are all junglers that you can play, you probably wouldn't. But realistically, if you're playing anything from S or A tier, you're going to have a good time in most circumstances. And even the junglers in B tier, especially across some of the lower and mid tier elos, are very, very strong too. But Lee Sin kind of stands as the top jungler in the meta right now. So that is my meta report for the end of November, coming up to the EU release. I hope it's been useful, and I will see you very soon. And if you enjoyed the content, feel free to subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. Yep, see you soon, scoundrels.